there's a lot of stuff that goes on, obviously, that we deal with at the state. There's a lot of stuff going on in the country. But some of the things that are the most important is what are we doing to make sure that our young people have the tools they need to make the most of their God-given ability when they leave our school system. And so when I became governor, I made the point very strongly that one way you can succeed, as a young person. Not everyone needs to go to a traditional four-year brick and ivy university. You certainly, unless you're going to MIT, don't need to go $100,000 in debt in order to do that. And so that's one way you can be successful of our university system, which is ranked #1 in America. The day I took office until now, obviously you look around the country, we've had a period for the U.S. economy of very, very high inflation, right? Groceries, all this stuff over 4 or 5 years. The tuition for Florida residents is the same today as the day I took office, lowest in the country. And we're proud of that, what universities are doing, and we want that to be a pathway, absolutely. But at the same time, and particularly if you look at the needs of the economy, there are so many opportunities for people that have vocational training, skills-based, to be able to get certified in high school. Maybe you go to state college for a year or two. Maybe you don't even need that, and you're already doing. I know there have been people from Brevard Public Schools who've been hired by Elon Musk at SpaceX right when they graduate. I mean, that's a pretty good opportunity to have. And obviously, the people here in the Space Coast, you have the proximity, and so that's really, really good. So I really believe, and when I was growing up, they would tell me, as well-meaning, they're like, unless you get a college degree, you are not going to be able to be successful in this. And it was almost like this piece of paper was what things, people would worship. I remember when I graduated, I played baseball. I grew up in Florida, played baseball for Yale, and the degree was in Latin. I'm like, well, who the hell knows what this degree even is? I worked this hard to get it. No one could even read it in my office. But this piece of paper is not the end-all, be-all, right? It's, kind of what are you actually learning, and how is that going to apply when you get out of school? And I just saw so many universities just dropping the ball with kind of political agendas, mushy courses, and all these other things. Look, if you're going to get a degree in engineering from MIT and you go into debt, you're going to be okay. That's just the reality. So I'm not saying some of these, even going into debt on any of these programs, necessarily is bad. There's obviously some that it would make sense. But there's so many colleges, particularly private universities over these years, massive tuition costs, massive fees, all these things, massive debt for the students, and then these students get out and they end up with jobs they could have had out of high school. Well, how is that doing well by those students? And so we said, but part of it was there was just a stigma that I think had been created over years that you're somehow not as good because you're going vocational versus to university. And I'll tell you, there's people that graduate high school in Florida that come out of our state colleges. They're involved in HVAC, they're involved in electrical, they're involved in these things. They're working for a couple years, making good money, and then they start their own business because the state's growing, there's need, and then they do very, very well. Meanwhile, some of the kids that go to traditional universities, they toil 5-6 years, debt, maybe they get some type of master's degree, but the C's aren't parting for them, right? So there's just more than one way to be successful, and we absolutely want to empower students to make the best choices that you can. So that was the mindset that I had when I became governor. And so early, I think my first month in office, we issued an executive order. So this is 20, and we had a very ambitious goal. We recognized that Florida was lagging in workforce education. We were in the bottom half of states at the time, and that we would set a goal to make Florida #1 in America in workforce education by the year 2030. And that was ambitious, but we believe that if we did right, it was achievable. Well, I'm proud to say that we made that goal, and we've achieved that goal. Today, I can say that Florida is ranked #1 in the nation in workforce education, and we achieved that goal 5 years ahead of schedule. And so here's why we can say this. Florida's ranked #1 in talent attraction for 3 years in a row. We ranked #1 in public higher education 9 years running. We're ranked #1 in 2-year college graduation rates, #1 for lowest tuition and fees and education freedom for the 4th consecutive year in a row. If you look at that executive order that I did back in 2019, and you look at all the bullets, every single bullet has been achieved. And these are things that are really significant and that are making a really, really big impact. And look, I'm not anyone that believes that money necessarily equals education outcomes. You have some of the worst schools in this country, in D.C., in Chicago. You look at how much money goes into that. It's feeding the bureaucracy. It's not educating students, and that's why they have failed schools. Meanwhile, like in Washington, D.C., I remember back in the day, Congress did the opportunity scholarships, and the kids that were able to go there, they did well. But when they were caught up in the bureaucracies, they didn't. So there's some bureaucracies around this country that are not serving students well. So I've never said that, like, oh, D.C. spends more, then they must be doing better, because that clearly isn't the case. At the same time, you do need to provide the tools, and that's not something that necessarily grows on trees. You do have to show a financial commitment to these programs and to this vision. That since 2019, we have committed more than $12 billion to workforce education. To put that in perspective, that's more than anyone else has done by a country mile, and we're proud of doing that. Now, the results of these investments are significant. During the academic year, Florida achieved a record-breaking CTE enrollment, serving more than 818,000 K-12 CTE students and nearly 512,000 post-secondary CTE students. That's a 30% increase from where we were 7 years ago. And we had the little hold room there when I was meeting with the participants, was the culinary program that they had. Kids were baking this stuff, and I had it, and it was good, and I probably shouldn't have had it, but you got to live, you live once. So we're doing it. And you have all these different things, and those are really good. Great programs where you're getting hands-on skills. Really, really good. Now, we have grown our integrated education and training programs to a record 582 statewide. That's more than 11,000 students just in the last 5 years, providing adult learners the opportunity to earn credentials while completing their high school diploma. I'm a big believer in there's certain value that can be had by sitting at a desk and listening to somebody instruct you. Obviously, that's inevitable that's going to be part of education, but I really believe you can learn by doing. And so we have really put forward an emphasis on apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship programs. And we've now reached a historic milestone there. 25,000 active participants statewide right now in apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship programs. That's an 11% increase year over year, and we've had a huge increase over the last 7 years. This allows our students to actually get on-the-job training and learn. And you know what? If you're in this position, you're in high school, you're showing you can do it, the best thing an employer is going to look for is, can you do the job? If you have a resume and all the education, that's an indicator if you can do the job. But if you're actually showing you can do the job, that's the best evidence there is. And so it's giving our students a huge advantage to be able to get a foothold in the workforce. Since its inception, our Workforce Development Capitalization Incentive Grant Program has allocated $240 million to bolster workforce education and training. That has supported 80 agencies and 812 newly created or expanded programs. This is a huge increase from what we were doing for that. We also have the Pathways to Career Opportunities Grant Program. The goal of that is to expand registered apprenticeships and pre-apprenticeships program. We've awarded over $100 million total, and 20,000 participants have been served in that program. So we are doing what we said we would do. I'm excited to see that this has been something that has come to fruition. I remember when we did it, I was like, well, can we actually do it? Because, I hate politicians and then just, they get into office and it's like nothing materializes. And, everything I've promised you, I've delivered on for 7 years. But, this was one where I was like, can we do it? Because, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be done. I'm like, yeah, we can do it. It's going to take, it'll take us till 2030. That's why we set the goal. And I'm like, all right, so let's do it. And so to be able to deliver on that and to be able to say, based on these metrics, that we're number one, here basically did that by the end of 2025 instead of going into 2030. That's a great success story. And these students that are involved in this, and it's not mutually exclusive between four-year colleges and apprenticeships and work certifications. I mean, I've met students workforce certifications and they're graduating, but then they also have opportunities to go to University of Florida, Florida State, all these places. So, you can do both, right? I mean, it isn't like, one or the other, but this has been really meaningful for a lot of students. So I want to thank everyone who's been involved. I mean, we launched this when Richard Corcoran was Education Commissioner. He did a really good job of kind of standing up and getting the vision going. And then, Manny Diaz, who's now the University of West Florida professor, really helped do it. And then Stassi has brought it in for a landing to say, yeah, here's where we are. We're not stopping. We're going to continue to do more. But I think that looking at somewhat failures of higher education over the years and some of these universities around the country, I mean, I think we're doing good with our universities, but we've had to do some reform there too. I mean, let's just be honest. It isn't like there's, some of these universities left to their own devices, they're going to veer into pursuing an agenda. I don't know why that's been the case, but that's just been the case. So what I don't want is people to, go deep into debt, spend 5 years, 6 years trying to get the degree. Sometimes they don't even get the degree. But even if you do and it's in zombie studies, well, what difference does that make at that point, right? You'd have been better off doing some of these programs that we've been able to now set up in the state of Florida. And we're going to keep doing it. So thanks to everybody that's been involved. I'm happy we've been able to reach this milestone. And we're going to continue really pushing forward. And oh, by the way, this Space Code done a very good job on all this, and I think you can see why there's a demand for people that have the skills to do some of the things that are going on in these. I mean, I don't know what the exact statistics are, but the number of launches worldwide compared to just here, it's like we have way more just here than the rest of the entire world, and that's something that's really special. And especially just because a lot of you who've been here for a while, you remember what it was like when the space shuttle, when you saw this dying, the space program was dying, the space industry was dying, and there was a lot of pessimism in the air for a few years. And then as the commercial investment started to take hold, it really, reinvigorated everything and breathed new life. And now we're talking about, setting up colonies on the moon, and you've got kind of a space race. The space race in the 50s and 60s was U.S. versus Soviet Union. Now the space race is kind of like, Musk versus Bezos versus all these guys trying to see who can get to the moon, who can set up a colony. Musk obviously wants to eventually go to Mars, but all that's happening right here in this backyard, and that's exciting. So thanks to everybody, and Stassi, come on up.